Everybody to today's class. We're looking at phrasal verbs again, and I want to remind you all that many of the phrasal verbs today are in this book. This is my book about phrasal verbs. If you want to buy a copy, you can find this on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and type in visual phrasal verbs, you will find it. The black and white copy is cheaper. So the black and white copy is £20, the colour copy is a little bit more expensive, it's £35, but you can see loads and loads of exercises and pictures and that kind of stuff, and loads of phrasal verbs. Most of the ones today that we're doing, they do appear in this book. Okay, now I've taken all of these phrasal verbs from articles in the press. It's perhaps a very good way to learn phrasal verbs because you will see that phrasal verbs appear in the newspapers in every article, and there are plenty of them. So the press is a good place to learn English. Unfortunately, it's not a good place to find out about what's going on around you because it manipulates you and it treats you like you're an idiot, and that's why I don't like the press. But still, I'm going to try and stay in a good mood today. I'm going to try not to get too angry and just explain what some of these words mean. It is a beautiful day today, so I'm going to go and just pull the curtains across and keep it out because it's coming on the board. It's shining on the board right there. But I certainly plan to go out and enjoy the sunshine and fresh air as soon as I can. But one second, let's try and get rid of this. Okay, that should make it less or easier to read the board. So let's look at the very first phrasal verb for today. To set out a roadmap, to set out a plan, to set out a route, to set out targets. All of these collocate with set out. Plan is probably the rarest, but you certainly can set out your route for the journey, meaning organise your route for the journey. And you can certainly set out a roadmap. Now, the article was talking about a roadmap out of lockdown. I imagine that they're talking about the fact that we need to plan to go back to normal, yeah, to ease restrictions, to lift restrictions. We'll need to plan. There needs to be some kind of roadmap, and the Prime Minister was talking about setting out a roadmap, which just means preparing what exactly will happen, how exactly the restrictions will be lifted. Okay, so you can set out or lay out a roadmap, targets, a route, yeah? And so both of these phrasal verbs are in the book. Please do buy the book if you want to get more practice with these. Now, to press somebody on means to put pressure on somebody, but it's about one specific thing. So there is a difference. I wouldn't say this is an exact synonym, put pressure on somebody. Put pressure on somebody. And the difference is this. When you just put pressure on somebody, it could be in any way you can think of. You can put pressure on somebody physically, mentally, in a lot of different ways you could put pressure on somebody. But to press somebody on, journalists are expected to press politicians on important questions. But they don't because they're all in bed together. But they're supposed to put pressure on these politicians. They're supposed to press them on certain issues. And that means ask somebody questions and put pressure on them in that way. So to press somebody on is always to ask them a question, but it's a tough question, a difficult question. You're putting pressure on them when you press them on something. So it's the job of the journalists to press politicians on various issues, but sadly they do a really bad job of that. Okay, so to commit to something. Now, to commit to someone means to make a commitment to that person. It's usually used for relationships, loving relationships. And when you commit to a person, maybe you decide to get married, or maybe you decide to get engaged, but you make some kind of commitment that shows you're going to be together for a long time, probably forever. Yeah. So when you commit to somebody, you make a commitment, and that means that you're probably in love and you've promised to stay together. But you could I can commit to a date with a student, and I don't mean a romantic date. I mean I could commit to a date for a lesson. And all we mean there is that we agree that we're definitely going to have that date for the next class. Okay, so you don't have to commit to somebody in a romantic sense. You can also commit to a date, which means that you say, yep, I'm definitely available on that date. We'll definitely do the meeting on that day. Let's commit to the 14th. Yeah, so you can do that as well. It's another phrasal verb. If you push for something, you argue in favour of something and you try to get that something. And so you might say something like this: ministers or 70 Tory, I read this earlier, 70 Tory MPs are pushing for an early end to the lockdown. Yeah, so some MPs are pushing for an early end to the lockdown, and it just means that they want, that they're demanding, that they're calling for. Notice that call for is really similar. Demanding, yeah, they're pushing for an early end to the lockdown, they're calling for an early end to the lockdown. Try to see these connections between these phrasal verbs, and it does make them easier. And that's what I try and do in that book. So please buy that book to get them in clusters, to get these different phrasal verbs in groups. Okay, to patch something up, it means to fix. Yeah, to patch something up. There is another one in this book which is similar to patch something up. I can't remember it now. I need to read this book again. But to patch something up, it means to fix, to repair. And so to patch up the economy, obviously our economy is in a terrible state because we've been paying people not to work for a whole year, and this can't go on forever. And so they're trying to patch up the economy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be taking my money out of pounds as quickly as possible. Who wants pounds? There's negative interest rates coming very soon, which means that if you've got pounds in the bank, you'll have to pay to keep them in the bank. Might as well borrow some money, yeah, if we've got negative interest rates. And that's what's going to happen. So my advice to you is to buy some Bitcoin. And please ask about some lessons afterwards and I can do you a discount on Bitcoin. Okay, so to patch up means to repair. To rule out means to exclude, to be certain that something won't happen. And so ministers have not ruled out tax hikes. They're going to put up taxes, yeah, to pay for this year of people sitting on their bums doing nothing. And so, yeah, they won't rule out tax hikes to pay for this idiocy that's been going on for a year and that people need to go to prison for. Okay, so to wreak havoc on. This means to cause chaos, to wreak havoc on something. So our politicians have wreaked havoc on the economy. Our politicians are wreaking havoc on our mental health and our journalists as well. And so, yeah, if you do feel like you're going crazy out there, please remember there are many others like you, like me, who are totally sane and realise that all of this is mass hysteria. So yeah, you can cause chaos, you can wreak havoc on the economy, you can wreak havoc on people's mental health. And to put somebody at odds with, this is a great expression. If you are at odds with someone, it means you have a difference of opinion. It means that you don't agree. And so you might say something like this. I read that the Minister of Finance wants to lift restrictions, yeah? But this has put him at odds with the scientists. The scientists in SAGE, yeah, SAGE means wise people, but these people are not wise men. The scientists in SAGE have been put at odds with Rishi Sunak, with this Minister of Finance. Now, I don't like Rishi, I don't like SAGE, obviously, but in the newspaper it was saying that these two groups are disagreeing at the moment, that the Minister of the Economy, or I can't remember what he's called here, that he has been that his position of wanting to lift restrictions early has put him at odds with the scientists. Yeah, they disagree. That's all it means, and that this has made them disagree because they have different positions. So maybe my position has put me at odds with some members of the audience. I think it's a minority. I don't think it's a majority, because I think the majority of people are sane and not crazy. But unfortunately, thanks to the newspapers, a lot of people are going that way. Okay, so to drive something down means to reduce, yeah, to reduce. So they're trying to drive down asymptomatic cases. I don't know why. Asymptomatic means healthy. To be backed by somebody means to be supported by somebody. Yeah, that's all it means. And so if you're ideas are backed by your classmates, it means they're supported by your classmates, okay? And so if you want to lift restrictions early and people back you, that means that you are backed by them, you are supported by them. Okay, to bring something back, it's what you think it means. If we bring back hanging, yeah, capital punishment, it means we bring back the death penalty. We bring back that form of punishment. I actually think we should bring back the death penalty at the moment for a lot of people in Parliament. We should bring back the death penalty. It would actually solve a lot of problems. I implore you, please bring back the death penalty for the current politicians and also for a lot of people in the media. And I'm thinking YouTube, I'm thinking Google, I'm thinking other arseholes like that. Okay, so to come into force means to take effect. Yeah, the third lockdown has come into force, means the third lockdown has been brought in. Remember, you bring in new laws, you bring in new legislations, you bring in new fascism, okay? So come into force, it means to start taking effect. So the third lockdown has already come into force. Okay, if you crack down on something, it means come down on, crack down on, clamp down on. All three of those verbs, they're a cluster, they're all in here, meaning to restrict something. I mean, really, it means to try to be stricter with a certain crime. And so they're trying to crack down on lockdown skeptics. People like me, they're cracking down on people that don't believe in the mass hysteria. How weird. They have to make people believe in this mass hysteria. It's so unbelievable. Okay, so you can impose restrictions, meaning bring in restrictions. You can lift restrictions, meaning remove restrictions. And you can ease restrictions, meaning make them less severe, less harsh. Yeah, and so they're talking about all three of these things. They're very useful words at the moment in the press because of what's going on. Now, to thrash out plans, again, this is certainly in this book. If you thrash out plans, it means you sit around a table in a big group talking about this plan. And it sounds like it's difficult. It's a difficult discussion. So you normally thrash out your problems, maybe with your friends, maybe with your classmates, who knows, but it means to debate, really, these plans and to do it in a big circle, in a big group. So they were thrashing out plans for vaccine passports, yeah? We're getting a lot of talk now about vaccine passports. Vaccine passports is obviously a type of passport that says that you are a superior Übermensch. It says that you should be allowed to travel because you're superior, you have had a vaccine, you are biologically better than the inferior people, the Untermensch, who will not be allowed plane tickets, who will not be allowed to go anywhere. This is fascism. Now, they were thrashing out these plans for these vaccine fascism, and they were trying to flesh out the details because obviously there are a lot of details that need to be discussed and decided. And when you say to flesh something out, it's a really good phrasal verb, this. I must admit it's not in the book, but it's a good one. It means to put meat on the bone, okay? To flesh something out means to put meat on the bone. Now, the idea here is that when you start a plan or a project, it's only a skeleton. It's just, there's just a few ideas there, but there's no meat on the bone. You still need to flesh out the details. You still need to make sure that it's clear what the details are, how this plan will actually work, yeah? And when you do that, you flesh out the details. So I think that's a great phrasal verb, meaning to put meat on the bone, to discuss the details and come to an understanding of what exactly they will be. So they were thrashing out plans for their fascism. They were fleshing out the details of which people would be considered inferior and which people would be considered superior. Yeah. And they were also talking about drafting in the army to help with this vaccine fascism. So when you draft somebody in, you ask a person to do a particular job for you. There's some particular job that you need, and you need to draft somebody in to do it, yeah? And so they've asked the army to help with this vaccine fascism. I suppose the army have to say yes sir and just obey, and so perhaps they're a good group to use to do your dirty work. And so they're drafting in the army to bring in the vaccine fascism, or certainly to make it worse. And they're drawing up plans for vaccine passports. Let's use the same one. Yeah, so they're drawing up plans for vaccine passports, for vaccine fascism. Sadly, the fascism is starting to spiral out of control, as I'm sure you're all aware. Make sure that you do your best to make sure your politicians go to court. And then if we do bring back capital punishment, we'll all be able to go and see the public hanging. So yeah, all of this is obviously spiralling out of control. The fascism's spiralling out of control, and the people's mental health is spiralling out of control. And hopefully we'll be able to bring things under control very soon. And I think that this will be done in the courts legally. And I think it's important for all of you out there to remember that you're not alone, actually. There are loads of people who are waiting for the sun. And during spring and in summer, when the sun comes out, we're all going to go outside again. We're all going to see our friends again. We're all going to see our family again. And I don't think anybody's going to stop us. I want you all to get out and be as social as possible over the next few months, because I think it's really important. And this is how we fight back, not fighting, but simply by disobeying. And there's no reason why any of you should be making sure your children, for example, don't see other children, or that your family don't see other people. Hey, it's everybody's free choice. It's your decision. You want to lock yourself in your room, fair enough. You want to lock your children away from his friends. Well, not fair enough, but it's your child. But please, everybody, get out there, enjoy yourselves, enjoy your lives. There's not long left. Yeah? Okay, thanks.